Chuba Hubbard punches it through at the bank, and the Panthers finally win one of these close battles. Joining me now, Locked On Panthers host Julian Council. Julian, happy holidays. Panthers fans going home with some holiday cheer in the regular season home finale.
Yeah.
What did you make of this win? Because at first it was like, uh-oh, here we go again in that overtime.
It was. And you look at the Panthers today, I really give a lot of credit to this team and Dave Canales for the resilience that they showed after last week, where for 3 straight weeks, we saw a completely different team than we had seen earlier on in the season. And Bryce Young, the way he played, was a big piece of that, but also just totally as far as how they had performed, the energy, the effort that's been there throughout the season, but more of the execution. I don't know who that team was we saw last week against Dallas, but the team that we saw against Philly, the team we saw against Tampa, and the team that we saw against Kansas City showed up again today. So I give them a lot of credit after they took what Dave Canales said was a step back last week, to take that step back a couple more forward and get this win on Sunday in a game where, yes, you're right, they made it a lot harder than it needed to be. When you're up 20-3, you probably should coast. When you're up 30-20, you got to find a way to close it out in regulation, but they found a way to have redemption. Chuba Hubbard getting that touchdown run to win the game on Sunday. So a lot of credit to Bryce Young, Dave Canales, and all involved by being able to bounce back after last week and play the way they played today.
I don't hear a lot of fans pining for the draft position, but this does feel like, and there's been a couple of recent games like this, that this folds into a culture being reestablished here. That's what it felt like in the building.
Yeah, I think it's more important that they closed out the season by being able to get some of these wins, and if they can win out, they're going to end up tripling their win total. So far, they've doubled their win total from a season ago. And if you thought about it, had they lost out and ended up 3-14, of course, that's only 1 win better than last year. And that also would have meant they would have lost 7 straight games. And that's not a great start to the Dave Canales era, had that been the case. Now, of course, it'd been nice had it looked the way it looked against KC and against Philadelphia and against Tampa, and then had they fallen today. But still, you want to be able to win. And there's a lot of guys here who, quite frankly, have no idea what it's like to win here in Carolina and have not been able to early on in their young careers. So being able to have the chemistry, build this foundation where you have seen things have been completely different in the second half of the season under Dave Canales, I think that's far more important than where the Panthers are back in the top 10 of the draft, where they're likely going to be anyways. And what has that gotten this team? They've been in the top 10, top 5 for 6 straight years. And they've still have been a terrible football team. Like, they're looking better now. They're still 4-11. This is not a good football team. Much better team we saw early on in the season. But being in the top 10 has gotten the Panthers nowhere. So maybe let's start winning some games and see if that can carry over to 2025 and beyond.
Julian, another good day on film for Bryce Young. No turnovers, 3 total touchdowns, oozing with confidence, responding from that 4-turnover day against the Cowboys. He is so much different than the quarterback we saw in the first 2 weeks. There's still more bad tape out there on him than good tape.
Yes.
But are you just becoming more comfortable with the fact that this might be who he is after all?
I am, and I do think 2 more games left to go. So let's wait and see whether the Panthers should bring him back in 2025 to be the starter again. But right now, it kind of feels like a foregone conclusion based off of how he has grown and developed over the course of the season, which was what the Panthers, I think, were hoping when they brought in Dave Canales to work with Bryce Young in his second year here in Carolina. That is pointing towards him being back in 2025. And there's still plenty of other things that this team needs to address in the offseason to help and aid Bryce moving forward, but also to get the better team together roster-wise and defensively especially. So the way you play today, a great bounce back for him. And I think the second time this season we've seen Bryce really bounce back in a strong way. The game against Denver, I don't think he was all that great when the game was still in the balance. Of course, he had a couple of big plays made in garbage time, but he played really well the next week against New Orleans. Then after the career-high 4 turnovers last week against Dallas, he comes out. The stats, they're not overwhelming. It's not like he's going out there and throwing for 300 yards or having 5 touchdowns, but to have that one on the ground on that drive where he had 2 20-plus yard touchdown or rushing attempts on that drive, and then also to have those couple touchdowns too in the passing game. He has looked more confident. He has shown that leadership, and he certainly is showing you a lot of the things that the Panthers liked coming out of Alabama, and that now is leading towards what you think in 2025. Let's build on this and see what he can do moving forward.
After every game, win or lose, Dave Canales waits by the tunnel and greets every player as they make their way off. As we look into his relationship with Bryce Young, because these two and their success together dictate the future of this franchise, thought there was a great moment between them after this game, a really nice embrace. What have you made of how Canales has handled this? Because he didn't tell us until this Friday that Bryce Young will be the quarterback going forward.
Oh, okay. Good for you, Dave. It has been interesting. I think it's a lesson for all of us that it's a long season. The National Football League, one thing can happen in week one, something else can happen in week. It takes a long time to really find out who a team is and who a player can be, and we've seen that play out. The first couple of weeks, Bryce Young, quite honestly, looked terrible. And it made sense why they decided to go to Andy Dalton. Also didn't make a lot of sense long-term why they decided to do that. And I always question the rhetoric behind what Dave Canales is saying and sticking with Andy Dalton and wondering if Bryce is going to come back at any point in time. We will always wonder, had there not been the car accident, when would have Bryce gotten in there, if at all? But you have seen that Dave has made him earn it. And that Dave really did, I guess, Bryce a service by having him sit behind Andy Dalton and see how a quarterback needs to conduct himself within the locker room and on the field to have success and be that QB1 and be that franchise quarterback. So it's very interesting to see what the relationship has been and how it's going to grow moving forward, assuming that Bryce Young maintains to be the quarterback after the next 2 weeks, which I think is likely going to be the case as long as he keeps playing like he played today and really the last month and a half.
Yeah, Dave Canales putting the ball in Bryce Young's hands in key situations, maybe even when the situation didn't dictate it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when we watch Bryce Young, I mean, he's got all these game-winning comebacks. It's like almost all of his wins are winning drives, winning comebacks. I mean, how comforting is that to see from this guy? As much bad as there's been, he does have a knack for this.
Yeah, you can't say the guy is not clutch, I suppose. Let's go back to former quarterbacks the Panthers have had since Cam Newton left. Teddy Bridgewater in that 2020 pandemic season where people should have just been happy to actually have football, but instead they complain about Teddy not being able to go down there, either tie or win the game. 0 for 8 in those situations. He couldn't get it done. Sam Darnold couldn't get it done when he was here. Now he's obviously playing well in Minnesota. Led him to a game-winning touchdown today. And Baker also wasn't able to get it done. But Bryce, you look at some of these games, obviously Kansas City, they go and tie it. We thought that they were going to win that game, but they had to get a stop. But they were able to tie late. Did it again against Tampa. Defense couldn't get a stop. Did it, we thought, against Philly. Leggett couldn't catch the ball. It's been pretty impressive that he's continuously found a way to lead his team down the field, to give them a chance to win these games, and truly has not been the issue outside of a week ago, where still they had some issues defensively that led to that loss. But yeah, it's very comforting to have a quarterback that you can believe in and know, all right, minute and a half left, got a timeout, need a field goal, need a tying touchdown. We've seen he can do it.
All right, 2 games left on the road, at Tampa, at Atlanta. How are they coming out of this?
Opportunity to ruin one of those teams' seasons. One of them's going to the playoffs.
They got a taste of that this Sunday.
Absolutely. So they could beat Tampa on Sunday, and then if they beat Atlanta, Tampa's going to still win the division. Or they could lose to Tampa, and then Atlanta can still have an opportunity, depending on if the Saints can beat Tampa. So it's a great opportunity for this team to be there, to know that at least 2 teams of the final 3, they can play spoiler to their playoff hopes. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it. Thinking about, hey, this is more kind of playoff in its own for Carolina. You have an opportunity to dictate who's going to win the NFC South. So go out there, show the kind of effort you showed today and execution. And that might be the case. So I'm sure plenty of fans would love to see the Panthers go down there and probably ruin the team down I-85 South season more than the one down at Tampa.
All right, Julian Council from Locked On Panthers joining us yet again. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Yes, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.
Same to you out there.